I'm going to go ahead and kind of go through the topic for this week. There's not going to be any online discussion like usually. There's no discussion question due this week. I'm going to go through kind of the course competencies, kind of like you would on your presentation. Let me share my screen right quick. I posted out here under the, it should have come up today under the shop talk thing, this would probably help you with your assignment. Week 9 questions. Okay, these are the course competencies. Let me go. Okay, I probably need to put this over in the .2E1 class. Let me go to .21 here and go to the shop talk. And I'll make sure that this is out there. The course summary. There's a course summary document that I put here. And I wrote this up. It covers all the competencies, and it goes into a lot more detail than what I'm going to go into. If I can get it to open. Where'd it go? So it's like 30 pages, maybe it's, I don't know, let me see how many pages it is. I think it's about, yeah, it's like 30 pages of stuff. And I just go competency by competency and go through it. And I'll post this out into the discussion for the online folks tonight before I leave campus here. And so we'll do that. But we have kind of put together this presentation to talk about the sort of the course and the course summary. Let me move this over here. And so this course 6152 was on project performance management, basically in delivering project performance. And well, there you go again. Let me just minimize this thing here. Put it up here. So it's not just about keeping projects on time and on budget. You know, I talked a lot about the modern approach to project management, how it centers on value delivery and making sure that the work actually benefits organization and stakeholders. In that, you know, we've kind of moved to this context model where everything's sort of a contingency base, and they call that tailoring. And we talked about that. And it's kind of based on, it's all guided by PMBOK 7. And PMBOK 8's coming out this year, and I believe they'll probably expand a little bit on some of this stuff. But PMBOK 7 includes, it's integrated principles, ethics, development models, and things like that. So that's kind of where we were. We're focused on these performance domains that deal with the integration of people, process, and outcomes. What we're doing. And so we want to set objectives, manage risk, and communicate. Use earned value management for cost and schedule tracking, and tie all work to project stakeholders. So integrating these principles with project performance and value, the core idea here is that success is measured by value that was created and not just by completing deliverables. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit later. They'll talk about something called a vanity metrics. Well, a vanity metric is just completed deliverables, like a checklist. And so we want to, with the key principles that are lined in the PMBOK and other They help us to set clear objectives and allocate resources effectively. It helps us to communicate and manage risk effectively. And the focus on everything is on stakeholder value throughout the project lifecycle. So we started on, if you took the course last session or when you take 6151, we'll talk about planning strategies and all that, but even all that still focused on delivering value. And so the delivery system that we talk about, we look at project management as a delivery system. So it's a value proposition that we have, practices that we can apply. We've got like waterfall practices, we got agile practices and lean practices. And then we have governance and mechanisms to help us get better. And so we have some best practices that we talked about here that we can use earned value, even with the agile sort of projects. And we want to be able to adapt and take feedback, and we want to do the metrics. So again, the idea here is behind this. This would be competency number 1, integrating principles with project performance, and that's the main takeaway is that we want to align every action we have with organizational strategy, stakeholder needs to ensure that we have meaningful outcomes. And so the next thing is ethical principles in project management, competency 2. And there's some core values and ethical values that they're reflected in the PMI's code of conduct and other code of conducts as well. But responsibility, respect, fairness, and honesty. So responsibility is about your own actions and the consequences of those actions. Respect is about how you treat others with what regard you treat these others. You want to treat them with the respect that they deserve. Fairness is we want to act without bias, and we want to be straightforward, and we want to try to recognize our own cognitive bias in things. And then honesty is where we want to communicate and deal with others truthfully with transparency as well. And so some real world ethical issues that come up in this is that we have IP theft, resume fraud, which is a big one for project managers. We want to make sure we don't have that. Data manipulation, all these, and we had issues of plagiarism coming up in the news lately. So it's all kinds of things that we need to make sure that kind of fall under this umbrella of good behavior. And we can use the PMI's framework, decision-making framework, ethical decision-making framework, and their code of conduct and professional, I think it's code of professional conduct is what it's called. And so the main takeaway of this competency is that the ethical conduct for project managers, especially in the performance domain, is that it's not optional. It builds good ethical behavior that respects these core values, builds trust, it drives performance, and it protects your reputation, your organization's reputation, and it helps you be a more professional individual. Number 3, we talked about evaluating the different development approaches. Again, this is sort of a holdover from the 6151, but it needs to be covered here because we need to know which one we're in. And so there's the predictive approach. It's generally what we call a stable approach that's more, it's kind of great for stability. It's kind of weak for flexibility because of all the planning that gets done up front. It's difficult to kind of make changes to the plan because it has to be adopted to an entire plan. Agile is things like Scrum, Kanban, and the SAFe framework and some of the bigger methods that we have are good for when we have changing requirements. They're adaptive and requires teamwork. And then there's the hybrid, and that's where modern project management is pretty going. I think they're going to probably even come up with a new word for it eventually, context-based or contingency-based project management. But that's where we take approaches from, take things from methods, I guess, or tools and techniques from these other predictive and adaptive and put them together to create a tailored. And we can do that there's tools that are kind of strict to strict to the production, the performance part, the performance domain. And those are things like that we would do apply in all, but retrospectives, frequent retrospectives, frequent feedback, frequent delivery, those kind of things are what we would focus on in this class. And the other things like planning, the iterative structure, all of that would come as part of the planning process. So we want to choose our project. So how do we select them? Well, is it stable, or are the requirements still kind of evolving? What kind of risk? Is it high or low? If it's low risk, maybe better to be something that's a little more predictive, a little more stable. It might be more efficient that way. Or if it's high risk, we maybe want to do something more adaptive so we can adapt to those risks. And there's no universal best model, so we want to match the approach to our project's context. Is what I've been talking about. Number 4, executing project work effectively. The focus here is on managing people and resources and processes and procurement and knowledge to deliver the values. And so when we're doing this, we want to anticipate bottlenecks, and we want to scope creep, and we want to stay aligned. It says stay agile and aligned. We can stay adaptive and aligned even in the more predictive one, but recommend this. The point here is that we're going to have change, and we want to be able to make sure that we adapt the right kind of change to the project we're working on. And so we want to have clear workflows and good communication. We want to make sure that we use our non-human and human resources effectively. And we want to effectively use issue and change management processes. That's kind of, that stay aligned thing. And we want to participate in proactive knowledge sharing. And so some of the challenges here is that we can have bottlenecks and scope creep and procurement delays. And so we want to anticipate those things. And the takeaway for this topic, competency is mostly that execution is sort of the heartbeat of the project. It's where things get done on the project. And so we want to coordinate in a smart way, and we want to stay open to change, and we want to be able to adapt if necessary. So number 5 here is stakeholders engagement in project information distribution. And so this is where stakeholder management is a little bit more than just managing stakeholders. It's get them engaged. And so we have this power interest grid, which is our main tool, and it's what we can use to help us kind of gauge what level of engagement we can expect from the stakeholder, and we can use it to help monitor that, because it can move there depending on where we are in the project, be different stakeholders at different times with different ability to affect what's going on in the project. And so we want to make sure that we stay on top of that, continuously monitor it. We can use the tools, the different types of communication. We've got push and pull and interactive communication. And those are some methods we can use. Push communications where we're like pushing out reports to people, sending emails, that kind of stuff. Pull is where we might use a dashboard or some kind of, what they call information radiators, big posters on the wall, things like that. And then interactive communication, things like meetings, ad hoc meetings, planning meetings, development meetings, those sort of things. And so we want to do that, and we want to make sure that we tailor those messages to tailor the format and the timing and the channel that we're going to use for that audience. So it may be email to someone else. It may be in-person updates, like a daily briefing. It might be for the team. It might be a daily stand-up meeting, and then, refinement meetings, things like that. And so the takeaway for this one is that stakeholders aren't just kind of passengers or bystanders. They're in the project with us, and we want to view them as kind of co-project managers or co-pilots to the project. And we want to keep them informed and keep them involved. And if we keep them informed and keep them involved, we'll keep them engaged. So that's what the stakeholder engagement. Number 6, quality plus and improvement, quality assurance and continuous improvement. This includes QA, which is quality assurance, which is that's a preventable approach. We want to prevent defects. We want to prevent problems in our process. Quality control is where we can catch and fix defects. So quality assurance usually goes into, it's kind of like where they say you want to design quality in. Quality assurance is planning, doing the right planning, making sure we carry out apply the right tools, the right methods, those sort of things. Quality control is where we put in monitoring and testing tools to make sure we catch the defects as we go. We also use quality assurance to have the stakeholder, whoever that stakeholder is, that is authorized to accept our deliverables. We want to make sure that that's done. And so we want to implement continuous improvement, and that's getting better over time. And we want to implement some kind of continuous improvement. We've talked about how to do that with sort of having more feedback, more, having kind of candid conversations, if you will, be open-minded with people, and be transparent, be trustworthy, and in that respect. So we can the psychological safety, that kind of thing we talked about last week, that's a sort of a big tool, a big place we want to be to do that. And so we have some tools for the quality assurance, and there's a whole bunch of them. If you look in the practice guide project group, there's probably 30 different types of quality tools between quality control and quality assurance. So, and some of them overlap, but sort of the main ones is we have that, what's called a PDA cycle. It's that Deming-Shewart cycle where we plan, do, check, act, that we can do that. We have retrospectives. We talked about doing retrospectives, and that is essentially a reflective meeting. When y'all do the week 10 retrospective assignment, you'll see the critical incident questionnaires that I like to use to kind of solicit that feedback. And the classroom is filling up. Traffic? Yeah, that's what I figured. I was going to suggest to the administration office that we start these classes at 6:45 or 7. Maybe, I don't know if they'll listen, but I was telling everybody in the class, we just came from Campbell Road to here, and it was just about a little over an hour to get here. So, and that's not very many miles. I think it's 5 miles, maybe 4 miles, something like that. It was insane. Okay, so what I'm doing is I'm just going through the different competencies, kind of like I would want you guys to do on the presentation. And what I will do for you guys, that since you're here, I'll post this out tomorrow. I'll post it out into the Shop Talk thing, so y'all can, the video, I'll post a video out there, the same video that I give the other class. Okay, so we have the PDCA, which is it's called the plan, do, check, act cycle. So we want to do that in little. Remember, we talked about how when you're doing execution, you're kind of doing little planning all the time, especially when risks come. Then we have retrospectives. Then we have something called the 5 whys. And I don't know if I mentioned that, but it's 5 whys comes from 6 Sigma, which is a statistical quality control methodology. And what it means is it's where you ask why enough to get to the root cause. You use it in root cause analysis. And so if y'all have kids, when they get to be about 4 or 5, they'll, why is the sky blue? Well, it's blue because there's chemicals that reflect it. Well, why are there chemicals in the sky? That kind of thing. And until you get to the right one. And my experience with this is when I was a manager way back when, the company I worked for had this thing called disciplined positive discipline for how you interact with employees as a manager. And the one thing that was kind of big at the time is they wanted to, we had a what do they call it? It's a human employee assistance program where you could get like resources to help people with problems they're having. And so one of the scenarios they gave us is that we have say you have an employee who shows up late a lot. And so the first thing you want to do is have a conversation with them and see if they can, kind of a coaching thing. But say it continues and it gets to be a problem. And you want to call them in, you want to ask them, well, why are you late for work continuously? Well, the answer might be, well, I didn't have gas in the car. You know, I have trouble buying gas. Well, you know, why are you having trouble getting gas in the car? Well, you know, I don't always have the money to buy gas. I need to get in the car. Well, why are you having problems with your money? Well, you know, we went to the casino last night and lost all the money. You know, had a bad night at the casino. Well, right there tells you that maybe there's an underlying problem, addiction problem, a gambling problem. So the advice they gave us is, as managers, you want to refer that person to the employee assistance program. But it was a way to kind of get to the root cause of a symptom. Showing up late was a symptom of this problem. And so that's what the 5 whys is. Kaizen is what we're doing when we're doing the, it's a term, it means small change or change small. It's a Japanese kind of word that means small. I think it means small, change small or small change. I can't remember whether the verb or noun comes first. But it's what we're doing with the retrospectives. Retrospectives are a Kaizen process, it's a small change. And then we can also use agile methods. Even if we're on a predictive, sort of stable project, one of those waterfall projects, we can use agile methods to help us manage quality. There's a couple of concepts that are in the books, in the readings that we talked, that should have been the cost of quality. And these 2 concepts here is that there's a thing called conformance. And the cost of conformance, part of quality, is what it costs us to do prevention and appraisal. So if we have to do, you know, additional steps to do that quality assurance process, we need to make sure that we do that. Then we need to have some way to measure whether or not we're effective. So we have to consider that in. And there's kind of a term from total quality management that quality is free. And what they mean by that is that you're better quality, you're going to get more sales, you're going to get, you know, eventually it's going to pay for itself. And so this is where this cost of quality kind of comes in. And then there's cost of non-conformance. And we got two places to do that. And that's internal and external failures. We obviously want to not have any failures or minimize failures, but we certainly want to keep them internal if there are. So like in the software world, you know, you have an opportunity to test everything, and probably nearly every app on your phone or every app on this computer that I'm working here has some defects in it that they've decided to ship, that for some reason they decide it's not a critical thing or it's rare use. There's certain criteria, but there's always a risk that someone's going to find that and report it, and that's an external failure. And that causes external failures, or both of these, internal and external, cause rework. And the cost of rework is the cost of quality for non-conformance. So the takeaway for quality and improvement is that quality is the driver of value. You know, it's not just simply checking stuff in. There's a term that I've got here. You want to bake it into everything you do. So you want to make sure that quality is an aspect, and you're concerned about quality. The next thing here is competency number 7. This is leading high-performing teams, or team. I'm not exactly what the exact competency is, but that's what it intended is. And so team performance domain is what we're looking at. And so we want to build and lead high-performing teams. We want to foster psychological safety and trust, and we want to match our leadership style to the team needs. And I was listening to a podcast today. There's a guy I like to listen to every morning. He's kind of a religious guy. And he was talking about the role of a religious leader in serving their congregation or their mosque or church or whatever. And he was talking about how difficult that is because you have no authority, no real authority over those people. I mean, there's some religions that but for most of them, the authority may come from their position in their role, but at the lower level congregation is where he was talking about. And what he said was, and I thought it was pretty interesting, he said your authority comes from serving your congregation. Through that service is where your authority comes from. And I kind of thought about that in terms of the concept of servant leadership. And one of the things that comes up a lot when I'm doing like training when I'm doing like corporate training and I talk about this servant leadership concept. A lot of people don't like the servant part of it because in a lot of cultures it's a demeaning role. Servants are kind of lower on the sort of the cultural ladder. I mean, in some cultures they have caste systems where and so it's an issue sometimes when you have a multi sort of a really high diversity team, right? And that's pretty normal these days. So I think I like what he said about that authority comes from serving. So that servant leadership thing is where you serve the team, make sure they have what they need to get the work done, make sure that the trust is there, create the social psychological safety network. So I just thought it was interesting and it's kind of relevant to this matching your leadership style. But the team performance domain, it focuses on team formation. We talked about that, storming, norming, forming, performing thing. We talked about leadership and adapting your leadership basically on where the team's at. So if you've got a brand new team and they're kind of in that forming stage, well, you're probably going to be more directive there. And it goes all the way to the servant leader side. You want to, there's a shift where you're less autocratic and the team's doing more of the work. And ideally, you would really want the team to kind of self-organize. I didn't say self-manage. There's a difference. You want them to self-organize their work and kind of commit to it, take ownership of the work and things like that. And so we need to adjust this style to the team dynamics. We want to foster trust, we want to foster inclusion, and we want to foster psychological safety with our teams. And the thing is the projects don't deliver the value. The teams that work on the project, the people that does that. So you want to invest in your teams. Is what that is. You want to invest your time as a servant leader. You want to invest in them and make sure that the team has the tools and techniques they need to do the work. Delivery performance. This is ensuring the project delivery meets its objectives. And this is from the delivery performance domain, which is mostly what this course is about. And all these other things are kind of fall under there. But we want to deliver scope and quality per expectations. And so we want to employ the quality assurance, the scope management, quality control, all of that. We want to enable benefit realization post-project. And what that means is we want to take a life cycle approach to a life cycle perspective to our project. So we don't want to make decisions today while we're executing the project that are going to be problems down the road. So we don't want to, sacrifice long-term benefit for short-term goals, essentially. And so we got to take into consideration that. And we should have leadership on that from our sponsors and stakeholders. And so we want to deliver scope at quality that we need to so that our stakeholders can realize the benefits of the project. We want to make sure that our project stays aligned to business goals. And so that brings in that governance, this change control. And we want to focus on outcomes, and that's where that long-term life cycle approach plays a role. And so this strategic alignment, this alignment to business goals, we want to regularly check that what we're building is what the business needs, and that comes from the feedback. And of all the things that the Agile movement started in the 90s, because the old way of kind of doing things at the time was you set a big room and you do a bunch of requirements, definitions, you write a bunch of fancy documents, you get people to sign off on them. Once they're signed off, they're kind of, for some reason, they just kind of turn into concrete, they turn into, rock tablets or something. You can't change them. That was kind of the idea back then. And then the teams went off and did their thing and delivered what they were working on. And more times than not, there was a gap between what the stakeholders' expectations were and what the teams thought the stakeholders wanted. So what we did is we introduced these methods like Scrum that introduce regular feedback. Probably one of the biggest things that we can do to improve projects of all kinds, whether they're the traditional predictive or adaptive or hybrid, is to make sure that we have regular feedback. That might mean demoing the product. It might actually, if it's a physical product, it might mean taking customers on a tour. If it's a building, get them out, do tours. I belong to the PMI Oklahoma City chapter. And one of the things they do that's really cool is they go around to projects all over, not just construction projects, but all kinds of projects. And they have their meetings at these businesses, and the business will take them around and show them what's going on in the project and kind of give them an insider look, which is really nice. And you need to do that, take that kind of approach to your stakeholders as well, and make it so you can get that feedback. So, in kind of the message here through this whole thing, this little section, is that just getting something done, planning the project, executing the project, meeting the technical part of the requirements, it's not enough. We want to make sure we do things right, and that's where we want to deliver the scope that was expected at the quality to realize the benefits. We want to make sure that those benefits are aligned with the organization, that they continue to stay aligned to the organization's goals. And we want to focus on outcomes, not just on outputs. So that was number 7, I think. No, number 8. Number 9 is the performance measurement competency. So we want to use performance measurement to stay on track. And so we want to use key performance indicators. That's what KPIs are. We want to use, in some of those, a lot of those come from earned value, which is, the first one is the schedule performance index, which tells us how efficient we are of using our time. If it's above 1, we're doing well. If it's below 1, we're not doing so well. Same thing with CPI, cost performance index. That's how well we're using our money. And then there's a term here that you'll probably read, you should have read in some of the readings, but there's a term here called velocity. And that's how fast you're kind of burning through the deliverables that you have, through your work breakdown structure, if you're doing a traditional project. If you're doing an agile project, you have a backlog. And it's essentially how fast are you completing stuff? And what you want is, are you completing it on time, or what you expected and what you estimated it at? So with the traditional projects, you can probably just track hours and how are we burning down the hours through our budget. And it's really kind of a actual cost or actual performance number. And in the agile methods, we assign things called the story points and estimate that. Then there's a return on investment, ROI, and there's a whole slew of financial metrics that you'll get to when you take 6153. It has all of that in there. and how to handle that, how to measure that. We also want to look at baselines versus actuals. So we want to baseline, the three big baselines that we're talking about in this course mostly are the scope baseline, which includes the scope statement, the work breakdown structure, and the work breakdown structure dictionary. Those are the three elements of the scope baseline. Then there's the cost baseline, and that's essentially a time-phased budget. So, and then there's the schedule baseline, and that's the time phase that we do. So we take the cost and lay them over the schedule, and that gives us our what's called a performance measurement or the performance management baseline, which is that time phase budget. And so we can use some of our communication techniques here to make sure that stakeholders are aware of what's going on. So dashboard, visual tools, conversations, talked about management by walking around, get up, talk to people, see what's going on, talk to team members, ask them what kind of issues and problems they're having, be on the lookout for anything that might interfere with the team's performance. And so we want to avoid these vanity metrics I talked about. Things like even velocity is kind of a vanity metric because you're just checking off what you're doing. But schedule performance index, the earned value stuff are not vanity metrics. So then the main takeaway from this is whatever you're doing, whichever methodology you use, you want to measure what matters and let the data guide your action. So you want to rely as much as you can on empirical evidence. So on a traditional project, you've done all this planning, you got all these baselines, monitor how the work goes and see if you're staying within your baselines. Look at these index, check out your to complete index, forecast where you think your estimate at completion is going to be. And if it looks like you're going to be out of control, if they say, hey, 5% up or down is good, is okay. Maybe it's not good, but it's okay. So if you're within that 10% range, then maybe that's okay, and your project's fine. But if you see that it looks like a trend, or it stays really high on unacceptable bounds, you want to make sure that you communicate that and get the change management involved, and make sure the project can stay back on track, or at least it reflects what value. Because sometimes the value proposition can change, and so that's where you want to measure this and do the demos and things like that. The 10th one here, and I think it's the last one, is managing uncertainty, the uncertainty domain. And this term here, and I believe it's in one of the readings, but it's called VUCA, and it's a term that stands for variable, uncertain, complex. I should know it off the top of my head, but I can't remember. Let me look on my phone right quick. I'll look it up. But it's a term that was created by DARPA back in the 60s. Hang on a second. Yeah, VUCA stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. It's a framework used to describe the turbulent and unpredictable nature of the world, and particularly in business and organizations. It highlights the challenges that leaders face when navigating these difficult conditions, such as making strategic decisions, adapting to change, and understanding the complexities of the environment. So, and one of the articles should have this in there, but that's what it is. It's just a term that we live in a complex world, and there's lots of uncertainty. And then we have volatility. It's part of the VUCA, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Oh, they got it right here. I got it right here. I'm smarter than I think I am. Then we want to use risk registers and scenario planning. So, we want to, this big part of the risk management is developing that risk register and understanding what the consequences are of the impact, that expected monetary value that we talked about, EMV. And so how much do we need to budget? How much contingency planning, that scenario planning, do we need to do? And so There's, in the risk management domain, there's something that we call risk. Those are known unknowns, and uncertainty is what we call the unknown unknowns, okay? And then we can address this VUCA environment, the volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and the ambiguous nature of things. And so the tools we have in the risk management are, one is all the risk planning, you know, identification, evaluation, and analysis. And we got two types of analysis. We have the quantitative and qualitative analysis. Then there's the prioritization and budgeting for the risk using the expected monetary value. And so the mindset here is, for risk, the good mindset for risk management is to kind of see the project that we're doing and everything that goes into it as sort of a big giant system, and look for things that are unexpected and help build resilience into our planning. And so the takeaway here is we want to be ready for risk. We want to be proactive. So we want to expect that we're going to have risk, and we want to, we don't want to be reactive to risk. And the only reactive risk I think that you really should think about is there's something happens that we don't plan for, we can't plan for, we didn't identify it, you may have to do some kind of workaround. And so that's a response to an unplanned risk. But we don't want to be reactive like that if we don't have to. So expect the unexpected. So the wrap up here is that project management it's not about flawlessly executing your project. It's about being flexible or open to change. Sometimes, especially the traditional project management gets a really bad rap when they say that it doesn't like change. It's not that it doesn't like change. What it doesn't like is it doesn't like unnecessary change, like scope creep, unnecessary change. So we want to make sure that we're being adaptive enough. We want to be flexible enough that we can stay on top of that, the change that's there, and that we're doing what changes get put into the project, the ones that should be there. We want to be ethical. So we want to make sure that we're conducting ourselves in a manner. I always used to like to, one of the courses I took years ago, they would say, well, you guys, I guess now it would be if you read it on X or TikTok, but they used to say, would you want your mother to read about this decision you made in a newspaper, right? Would you be proud of what you did? Nowadays it would be, well, would you want her to read it on social media? So don't do something you don't want to see out there. Be ethical. It's kind of what the point is, and resist the temptation to do those things. We want to take informed actions. We want to base our decisions on empirical evidence and informed actions. And we also want to be sure that we keep our focus on the people and the purpose and the progress, because delivering outcome, and we want to deliver outcomes that matter to our stakeholders. And that's it. I don't know, what time is it? So do you guys, let me get you back up here on the screen. So do you guys have any questions about the presentation that's due? Essentially, I just went through all the competencies. I took a lot more time than I expect y'all to do, but it's something like that. Just kind of step through them, talk about the key points, key takeaways, and maybe at the end on the last slide, talk about what you took away from this course would be helpful. And if you have trouble uploading them, for some reason, they've bumped down the size of the files that we can upload to Moodle. You can always go to a Google Drive, or you can email it to me, and when you email it, it'll create a Google Drive for you. But what I'm kind of expecting you to do is to write a little summary, maybe that takeaway paragraph in the discussion post, and then post a link to the Google Drive, or if you've got your own YouTube account, put it up there and post a link to it. Or if you have trouble, just email it to me and I'll post it for you. But if you're going to email it to me, you need to go online and post go ahead and create a discussion post, because I'll need to have some place to upload it to. Otherwise I'll have to get back to you. But you can go in here to Microsoft PowerPoint. Let me just show you. I'll just take this one here. I lose you guys online?
No, Professor Darnell, quick question. Are you sharing? I only have you as a pin. I don't see what you're sharing on screen.
Yeah, I probably didn't do that. So hang on a second. Let me see if I can get out of this right quick. All right, what I'm going to do is share my screen. I'll show you. If I can get my mouse to cooperate. Sorry about that.
No worries, I got to see the whole class this time.
Yeah. Y'all should all know each other pretty well by now. Hopefully that's one thing that came out of this these discussions that we had in little breakout rooms. Let me see if I can get my trackball working here. No. Okay. What I was saying is you go in here to this record, click on record up here. Hang on a second. My little Zoom action bar is in the way. Okay, so click on record, and then you can turn on the Cameo, and you tell it to apply to all slides, and it gives you this. My camera the camera's not working because it has this, and nobody in here is seeing this on this classroom because it thinks it's on a presentation. So anyway, I'll turn around. Let me turn this around. Didn't realize it wasn't doing that. So right down here in the corner is that Cameo thing. And that's where, if your camera's working, you'll show up there. And then when you go here to record, press record, and you can tell it to record from the beginning. And it's going to bring up this screen here. And your little Cameo thing should be down here. But let me see if I can go to another slide. It's not a good slide to record on. Let me go back to the edit. Well, PowerPoint doesn't like it too much here. Let me see if I can. Here we go. Maybe this will work. Where's the tab key? Well, anyway, when you advance, I'm getting something here. Oh, okay. So you see these lines up here at the top of the screen. That's when you press record, it's going to give you a little countdown. I think it counts down 3 or 4 seconds. And then you can adjust, it'll come up and it'll have a little bar over to the right-hand side of the screen. And it'll tell you can change the speed of this. And you can just read the narration and you'll see your picture down here. And then when you're done, you can click export up here. And it's not going to let me, well, yeah, there it goes. And it'll ask you where you're going to export it. You can go back and you want to export as an MP4 file. You can also go back here after you've done that and go to File, and you can go down here to Save a Copy. And I don't know why they call it Save a Copy instead of Save As. And you can browse someplace where you want to put it. But if you go down here to Save File Type, you can scroll down here and there's an MP4 somewhere down there. I can't, yeah, right there, MPG4 video, right there. So, and then you do that and it'll save it. And it'll save it to it'll give you an option to save it where you save it. I think the export will save it to your default hard drive. So anyway, if you have an issue, and everybody with your Amberton email, that's managed by Gmail, you have a Google Docs account that goes with that. So you just go to log in. You can go to docs.google.com, and you can set up a Google Docs page. And then I tried to copy an example out there, but again, 15 minutes max. Go through those, about a minute and a half per competency, something like that. And then next week, the folks online, let me close this so I can bring this up so I can see all y'all again. Where's the stop share? Okay, so now I can see everybody. We won't have a Zoom class next week, so you guys need to go out online and watch some of the videos and do a couple of peer reviews. And for those of you in the classroom here, we'll meet next week and we'll pick a few of them. If you were here last year, so were some of you. We'll put them on the screen here, and you get on your computer and you can do the peer review discussion in the classroom. And then you can go ahead and do the retrospective assignment so that by the time we leave next week, you'll be done with the course. You know, the only thing I would ask everybody to do is go look at your grade book and make sure I got everything graded. Okay. So, you know, especially if you turn something late. I know my professors really hate people. You know, if you've had professors before, I've had some, where if you're late, they just give you 0, right? It's because it really messes up your grading flow, and it's a whole bunch of administrative work. I don't have that attitude. I realize I went to school just like all of y'all, working and family and all that. I know things happen, but having said that, there is a limit, and it's a project management course. So one of the things about project managers is we should all be pretty good time managers, you know. And so a practice that I've taken on, I'm taking a class now, is, you know, everything's due on Sunday, kind of like this course, is I work on, like this coming Sunday, I'm going to be working on the stuff for the following week, not the past week, not this week. It helps keep me, so if I have any kind of unplanned events, I'm still able to turn on time, because I've got one of those professors that, you know, it's a math course, and, you know, he's a stickler for getting things in on time. So, but having said that, I guess we can call this one done. We don't need to have the discussions or anything. And I do appreciate you guys forging through the traffic and getting here. So I'll give you some credit for that. Unless you just want to stay for another 30 minutes, and we can do that. But, you know, look at him. He's like, oh, sure. You got to get back out in the traffic. That's the problem, right? So good night, everybody. And I'll post this recording out in the forums online tomorrow, first thing in the morning. All righty? And I'll post those notes before I leave right now. So thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.